It seems like when life gets difficult, when we are encountering obstacles or when we are encountering painful periods in our life, it seems like the ego gets more active. The voices become more incessant. And this isn't a coincidence. There's something occurring inside of you. And I'd like to use an example that I take often from one of my favorite books. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And in it, Michael Singer talks about the ego kind of like a tea kettle. When you put a tea kettle on the fire, it starts accumulating pressure, and pretty soon you'll hear that tea kettle whistle. And what the whistling represents is just a freeing of all of the pressure that has been accumulated inside the tea kettle. The ego is the same way. Thoughts are energy. So what happens when your ego gets to a point where there's so much pressure inside, the ego starts whistling. And the whistling of the ego is the incessant chatter, the voices that don't stop, the voices that don't let you sleep at night when your body is really, really tired. This is basically your ego releasing energy. It's your ego or your mind releasing all of this pressure that is inside. So think of the ego kind of like you would a tea kettle, and when the pressure is accumulated, it's going to whistle. And the same thing occurs with your mind. Now, what do you do? What do you do when you're encountering a difficult situation in life, when your life seems to be a complete chaos or mess, when things seems to be falling apart on you? And your mind is just incessant and not helping at all with the situation, because the more incessant your mind is, the more difficult it'll be to navigate the situation that you may be in. So what do you do? How do you quiet that ego? And one of the tricks that I like using, and I like giving this advice to people, and it seems to work for a lot of people, I've had this feedback given to me, and that is I tell people, write things down. So what is the writing things down? What does it do? It's a way for you to help your ego release pressure. So kind of like your tea kettle starts whistling when it's on the fire, what do? You turn the fire off and the tea kettle stops whistling because the pressure is no longer in there. So it's the same thing with your ego. When you feel like life is chaos and your mind is incessant, write things down. Have a journal and just write down how you're feeling. Write down all of the thoughts that are occurring in your mind. Write them down without editing. Maybe make checklists or just make bullet points of what you're feeling, what's occurring inside, and what thoughts you're having. And then sit with those written thoughts. Read them out loud. I like doing that a lot. Read out loud what your mind is thinking. And pretty soon, as you're reading out loud all of the thoughts that you've written down, or just the act really of writing down everything that's occurring in your internal environment, it helps you release the pressure that has accumulated inside of you. Thoughts are energy, and when you put those thoughts on paper, you are releasing the energy and you're helping to calm the ego down. There are many other ways to quiet the mind, and I could go on and on about that, but writing things down, journaling things, it's one of my favorite little tricks to kind of start calming the ego down, bringing you to a place where you're more centered, where you can face whatever difficulties you may be having right now in life. You can face those difficulties with a quieter mind and a more centered being.